Yeah, this is me trying to do a live stream. So Emily asked about a parenting class. Not sure how many hours I should do. The one in Utah, the parenting class is like the one everybody has to take to get divorced is like 2 or 3 hours. It's run by the court though. So if you want a separate parenting class because both of you need to learn how to co-parent, then most of them that we have here, they're over a few weeks, usually 6 to 8 weeks, once a week for a couple hours, something like that. Yeah, I am, Maria. I am trying to multitask, but I'm a guy, so that doesn't really happen. So I will just go back and forth and do these at different times. Like I said, I'm kind of waiting. I'm going to be around the house a lot this week because I am waiting for my wife to give birth. So kind of in that limbo phase. She's 43, so I'm a little nervous about it. So I'm trying to stick around and make sure that everything's okay. Why do they need to do a parenting class? It's a Utah thing at the legislature. So they need to do a parenting class when they get divorced if they have kids, not if you don't have kids. But if you do have kids, the idea is that you get a parenting class and they give you some ideas on how to divorce when you're, or I'm sorry, how to parent when you're divorced. Really, the entire class is like be nice to each other, don't be jerks, be nice to each other, don't put your kids in the middle of things. I mean, it's like basic 101 stuff, but you'd be surprised at how many people cannot do basic 101 parenting when they get divorced. Oh, is there something these are good questions. Is there something I wish teachers knew about divorce? Try not to take sides, probably. There are some weird situations where where a teacher really takes the side of one of the parents, and then that messes with the teacher child relationship as well. So I would say don't take sides. But at the same time, if you see things are going really, really wrong with the kid and you know the kid is divorced, you may want to talk to the kid and see, kind of what's happening, or try to talk to the parents individually to see if the child's having a hard time with divorce, something like that. But I wouldn't really take sides in the whole thing. Because if you do, and here's the other thing, if you do take sides, then you're going to get called as a witness in court, and your principal is not going to like dealing with that. I've done this before. I've dealt with the attorneys for school districts and principals as well, and you get into this big old tussle with your principal, and you probably don't want that as a teacher. Special ed. Yeah, my dad was a special ed teacher, so that's a rough life, and you don't want to make it harder on yourself. Let me see if we have anything back here. Oh, any advice for somebody who has started living in an RV full time out of necessity? I'm assuming this has to do with divorce and kids. Otherwise, like, you can just live in an RV. I don't really care. But when it comes to having kids and living in an RV out of necessity when you're divorced, I've actually had those cases before. Look, we live in America. It's okay to be poor in America if you want to. If you want to live in a one-room apartment, you have 6 people in there. That's not the best way to go about it if you have kids, but sometimes that's your situation. So if you live in an RV, just make sure the RV is completely suitable, that you have someplace to hook it up, and you have running water and heat and all those types of things to make sure that your kid is okay. And then my experience has been that courts understand that. They want you to get in a better spot, obviously, but if you need to do that for a few months or a year or whatever it is to get yourself back on your feet, it's not like the court's going to take away time with your kids just because you're poor and you live in an RV. So Rachel, can I change a custody order without an attorney? Yes, you can. You need to figure it out. So either go to your state's court website, and they may have forms on there for you, or call your local courthouse and talk to the clerk and see if there's kind of a self-help center that can guide you through the process. But you definitely can do it. The question then becomes, should you do that? And that depends. Like, do you have the money to hire an attorney? Do you want it done correctly? Or are you willing to take the chance of not doing it correctly? A lot of people are smart enough to kind of figure it out, especially if it's a simple change in child support or something, something along those lines. Then a lot of people come into my office and they just want to pay us to get it done because they don't want that kind of emotional or psychological baggage of getting it wrong and then having to change it in the future. So weigh all of those and then decide what you want to do. Oh, Emily, high conflict, struggling with communication. Yeah, so what I would try to find is something called a high conflict parenting class. We have a few of those in Utah. I would imagine other states have something very much like that. So Google high conflict parenting class in your state and see what's out there. Or you could always just set up a time to talk to an attorney in your area for like an hour and ask them how to deal with the situation, see if they have any referrals. Any advice on how to help kids adjust to the change of a divorce? Don't be a jerk. That's the best one. I mean, look, this is going to be hard enough on your kids as it is. No matter how justified a divorce is, it's going to be absolute murder on your children for a little while. Unless, I mean, the only exception to that is if one parent was really, really super bad and abusive, and then the kids are going to be very, very relieved. But even then, I mean, kids are kids and we're complicated creatures and they don't really know their own emotions and they're still going to be very sad about it. So, the best thing you can do is not to be a jerk. Don't put the other parent down. Don't badmouth. Don't do that sort of thing. That all just makes it more difficult on your kids. And also try to find a situation that is as stable as possible. You don't want to be like jumping around every 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever. Different places. So get a good stable home or, live with your parents for a while, get a good apartment, something like that. That'll really help kids out. Oh, and try to keep them, if you can, keep them in the same school. That tends to help kids as well. How can we handle, Susanna asks, how can we handle COVID vaccine? I don't want to get her son. Oh, you don't want to you don't want your son to get it, but your ex does. Here in Utah, you're just going to lose that battle. So this is how it comes. This is how it happens with vaccines. People who don't want the vaccine are going to lose if it comes before a judge. 100% of the time. And look, I don't know about other states, right? I'm just talking about Utah. But 100% of the time in Utah, you're going to lose. Like the anti-vaxxer or the person who has the problems with the vaccine is going to lose that unless there is actual verifiable medical evidence that your child is going to be adversely affected by the vaccine. And let me tell you, that's almost impossible. I mean, even if it were true, it's almost impossible to prove. So it's just not really a fight that you want to have. All right, let's see what else we got. How to get X to back down on making me pay for loans and credit cards I didn't take out. He took out. Well, it depends on, this is going to depend on your state, but in most states, especially community property states like Arizona, California, Washington, those kind of southern rim states. It doesn't matter if it's community property, you gotta pay it even if you didn't know about them. Here in Utah, we're what's called an equitable distribution of the debt state, which means 50-50 unless otherwise necessary. But even here, the vast majority of the time, people are just going to pay it, even if they didn't know about the credit card. The way the judges think about it is, hey, look, you should have kept control of your spouse a little bit better, right? Goes for men and for women. So it's a tough one. It really is, but that's how most judges think about it, at least here in Utah. Can your ex come after you for more child support just because you got a promotion and make more money? This depends on the amount of money you make here in Utah. Usually you need a change of about 30% up or down. So let's say you make $100,000 a year and then you get a promotion a year later and you make $150,000 per year. Yes, your ex is going to be able to go back and ask for some more child support. Conversely, if you make $100,000 a year and you go down to $50,000 a year, you are able to ask to decrease your child support because of the change in income. And now, again, states are going to, the percentages of change are really going to depend on your state. Okay. Oh, you're welcome, Emily. And thanks for your comments. I see them on there. It's fun to interact with people. So Elizabeth, you're in Utah. So yeah, my answer, I always kind of do this. Since I'm not barred in other states, right? I can't practice in Arizona, not yet, at least. I can't practice in Arizona. I can't practice in Connecticut. I can't do these sorts of things because of the way the American judicial system is set up. Unless we get barred in multiple states, we're barred in one state, and the vast majority of attorneys are barred in only one state. So I am barred only in Utah at this point. I'm actually barred in New Mexico, but I haven't taken cases in New Mexico for probably 9 years. So I let that lapse, but I can only answer questions as I understand them in Utah, and then sometimes that translates to other states. Let's put it that way, and then sometimes it does not at all, because states have vastly different laws when it comes to divorce, especially states like California, Chicago, Illinois, New York, Connecticut. Some of those larger states have very strange divorce laws, and incredibly onerous divorce laws for parents and people who pay alimony and child support. All right, let's see what we got. In Illinois, what do you think about the stimulus child's portion and the non-custodial parent? I don't know how they handle this in Illinois, but here in Utah, if you were scheduled to get the stimulus check, and it's like your year to have the kids on there, and you get more of the stimulus because you have the kids, because it's your year, that's just the way it is. They're not gonna divide it. They're not gonna mess with it. In Illinois, though, I have absolutely no idea how that works. I know there is an Illinois divorce attorney here on TikTok, and he's very good. I cannot remember his handle, but you may want to. He wears a beret in his videos. He's actually a pretty cool guy, but he wears a beret, so you may want to go check him out and see if you can find a video about the stimulus. Okay, so Steph ORS says, except for a year for modification to. Expect a year for modification to go through. Well, going back to court to speed this up. Oh, yeah. So ORS is the Office of Recovery Services. Different states call it different things, but really it's just a clearinghouse for child support. And they're bureaucrats, and they're little Nazis. You never know what you're going to get, and they don't do their jobs terribly well a lot of times. So, basic things can take 6 months or a year, and you're probably going through that. Yes, in that sort of situation, I have people that come and we file with the court, and we get it taken care of, months and months and months in advance of when ORS could do it. So, if it's worth it to you, there's enough money in play, then yeah, go for it. Will it end up in court regardless? No, usually a change in, if somebody doesn't like the way ORS has calculated the child support, that's an administrative problem, so it stays within ORS. You can get in front of the court and talk about the situation, so it doesn't necessarily go before the court, because it usually gets taken care of in the ORS administrative process. But again, if it's worth it to you, just go to court and get the thing changed now. So Bruno, he resides with me 70% of the time. I'm obviously missing something. Let me see if I can find this. There has to be a message. Yeah, Bruno, ask that again, if you would. Oh, the beret. It's just kind of weird, right? There's a guy named Matt Pfeiffer who does a lot of counseling and kind of specializes in narcissism. He also wears a beret, and I just think it's funny. I'm not a hat guy at all. Like I have some hats. I have a Wimbledon cap that I wear. I went to BYU for undergrad, so I have some BYU hats, but I just don't like hats at all, and I don't think I would ever wear a beret if my life depended on it. But, Matt looks pretty cool in his. Why can't I practice in Alabama? Well, I live in Utah, so Alabama's long way away. It's a pretty state from what I understand, though. I've never actually been. My wife's from Texas, and we've been to Texas. I've been to New Orleans and Atlanta. That's about my extent with the South. I'm from Alaska originally, so I've never really made it to the South too much. We did go to Florida right before they opened the thing back up, but anyway, we just went for a few days. this summer. Florida's fantastic, by the way. Loved it. Went down to Key West and did all the Keys and Miami and everything. Little Havana, and I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. That was one of the only places I've ever been in my entire life in the United States where nobody would speak English to me. So we'd go to Little Havana. My wife speaks Spanish, but she speaks Argentine Spanish. So, Little Havana, they speak very differently. So we would go and I would order food, and everyone around me kind of looks like me, right? I'm like the whitest guy on the earth, and Cubans usually aren't terribly dark. So a lot of people look exactly like me. So I'll just assume that I spoke Spanish, and I'd speak to them in English, and they're like, no, we're not doing that. You're going to speak Spanish to me, or otherwise you're not going to get food. So I had to muddle through with my horrid Spanish. I speak Italian. So I think I actually just spoke to them in Italian, and that usually gets us along. But Miami's a super cool place. Really enjoyed Florida. Every place I've been in the South I've enjoyed, though. Oh, in South Carolina, we did go to South Carolina this Christmas for a couple weeks. Stayed on Folly Beach down there near Charleston. Utterly fantastic place. Love South Carolina. Food is excellent. People are super nice. Just great weather. Great stuff. Okay, I should probably get back to these. How do you take care of taxes that are due to the state? Do those have to be split? Oh, okay. So you're getting divorced. There are taxes that are due. Yes. Very, very often here in Utah, the way we do this is everybody's just responsible for 50% of it. And if you, conversely though, if you get a tax refund, everybody gets 50% of it. Let's see if there's anything else. So Steph, okay, he'll be going back to court because he's seeking 50-50 after 11 years. So I'll handle both. Yeah. Just handle both at the same time. That's the way we do it. Whenever we try to change custody or parent time, we automatically have to put in the child support calculations for that change, right? That's just part of what we do in our pleading. So you are going to deal with both of them at the same time. Emily. Yeah, Matt's a pretty cool guy. I think he does a lot of good work for people. Oh, my ex wants to take me to court to claim our son and wants our son's stimulus money. This is Bruno. Okay. Again, here in Utah, if it's your year for the exemptions for the kids and you just happen to get the stimulus checks, the $1,400, whatever it is for the kids, because it's your year, in Utah, we just deal with that. Like you're not getting those split. The courts made that determination about, I think, a couple months after COVID started and the first kind of Trump stimulus checks went out. So that's the way we do it. Other states may be completely and totally different, though. Let's see what we got. These are good questions. Keep them coming. Oh, we got some. Okay. How about an ex getting cash under the table? This is one of the toughest things to deal with. Look, if they get cash and they do not put it in a bank, it is impossible to prove that they actually got cash. I mean, unless you have a PI literally sitting there taking pictures of them and whatnot, and no one actually does that. So if they're good about it and they get cash and they never put it in a bank, it's impossible to do it. If they get cash and then put it in a bank, you can get the bank records and prove what their income is that way. So you'd have to actually subpoena the bank records. So Rock Climber 33, is a CFI worth money? You gotta understand that I do not get acronyms. I don't use acronyms because I hate them. And then I do not understand other states' acronyms. I've heard CFI before, but I don't remember what it is. So tell me what it is and I will try to answer that question. Any advice on retaking the bar? I have absolutely no idea. I didn't retake a bar. I passed the bar twice. I hate the bar. I'm a little ADD when it comes to things like the bar. I was always a good student, and I can memorize pretty much anything on the earth. But I hated the bar so much that I could only study for it for like 3 weeks. So I'm not a good person to ask how to how to pass the bar. I do remember a lot of days that I sat around. So what would happen is, when I took a bar exam, I was able to study for it for 3 weeks. Like I said, I would send my family away. My wife's from Texas, so the family would go to Texas, and I would sit around in my underwear on our recliner for like 3 weeks. I would eventually put clothes on, but it was like 16 hours a day that I would study, and I would just read the same things over and over again, and I would just memorize them all. And then I would take tests and do that. I think the most important thing for passing the bar is you get as many of those practice tests as possible, and you just take them and take them and take them and take them and take them, right? That's really going to help you out. Other than that, though, man, just get to memorizing. I had hundreds and hundreds and probably over 1,000 3x5 cards, and I would just memorize them all. Where'd I go for my bar? So I have a bar. I think you mean law degree, but I'm barred in New Mexico and Utah. The only active one is in Utah. I went to the University of Nebraska for law school because I was living in Utah and wanted to go to either BYU or the University of Utah, and they told me I was too stupid for that, so I went to the University of Nebraska, and now I employ graduates of the University of Utah and BYU, so they can suck it. Tag Matt. Yeah, so it's Matt Pfeiffer. Pfiffer, I think. But Emily, if you can tag him, that'd be great. My husband and I agreed on a settlement, and my lawyer said he doubts the judge would sign off. Chris, that would be very interesting if the judge did not, in fact, sign off. You can pretty much do everything. Again, this Utah is my experience. You can pretty much agree to anything in your divorce as long as you aren't selling your kids into slavery or something. So I'm not entirely sure why the judge wouldn't sign off on it. Possibly because you've miscalculated child support. Judges will not sign off if you miscalculate child support. Okay, Scotland. Thanks. I love your videos. Thank you very much. Other jurisdictions, yeah. So America is a common law jurisdiction like Scotland is, but we have very, very different laws and a federal system that is very different from Scotland's and England's, from what I understand. But I can tell you, though, not on the law, but went to Wimbledon about 3 years ago and then went up to Scotland after that. Man, so I'm from Alaska. I love Scotland like nothing else. Like, absolutely gorgeous. Your food up there is wonderful. I love haggis. I love all of that Scottish food. Everything I had up there was killer, and I cannot wait to get back, actually. Somebody asked about the bar. Let me find that one. Spousal support, what prevents one from getting it? Usually making too much money. So alimony is usually based on need, and then the need of one spouse, and then the ability to pay of the other spouse. So if you have no need for it because you make $100,000 or $200,000 a year or whatever it is, then you're not going to get alimony. Again, Utah, so California would probably be a very, very different analysis. If son's dad owes child support, could his IRS return be interfered with? Yeah, you can take a return. Absolutely. Very often the Office of Recovery Services will do exactly that. What happens if I want my child to do homeschool during COVID-19, but my ex wants real school? I don't know. I would negotiate between the two of you as much as humanly possible and try to come up with something that works, even if it's not real good, because you just don't want to put your child's life in a judge's hands to make this decision. Truther girl, thanks. I appreciate the love there. My videos are pretty good. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just here to try to answer questions for people in a very, very un-TikTok way. Oh, you failed the bar. Okay, so this is KG Raw 95. fail the bar. I'm just questioning my entire intelligence. Look, it happens, man. You know, people fail tests. Okay. I think here in Utah, what's the bar passage rate? The failure rate is like 12%. I know a lot of intelligent people who have failed the bar, either because they just didn't take it seriously enough or they're not good at tests. You're not unintelligent. It's a freaking stupid test that doesn't differentiate between good and bad attorneys. It's completely arbitrary, but it is a test. So get to memorizing. All right, let's see what else we have. My fiance has residential custody for the kids. The mom has not been around in 5 years. That's from Candy. I don't know if there's a question that goes along with that. Answered that one. Am I a Canadian lawyer? I am not a Canadian lawyer. I'm from Alaska. That's still a long way off, though. I swear that's one of the only places on Earth that's colder than Canada. Although I have to say, every Canadian person I've ever met has been like the nicest human being ever. Okay, is a non-primary parent, if a non-primary parent has a large raise 2 years ago and never notified the court, I assume this is probably for child support. So the way this works, child support works in Utah is you can't go backward to try to get child support. It's from essentially the day you file to modify child support going forward, not backward. So keep that in mind. When's the baby due? Right. So Maria, she was due yesterday. So my wife was due yesterday and that didn't happen. She's set to get induced on Wednesday. So we're all just kind of hoping this happens without inducement having to happen. So last time, no one knows this story, so I'll just kind of tell everybody. Our first son is adopted, and he's from St. Louis. He's a little black guy, and we got him when he was born because we were never able to have our own kids. So we adopted him for a very long time, thought that's the only child we were going to have. And then my wife worked on me a lot, and we did IVF. I dealt with infertility spiritually and emotionally a long time ago, and I didn't want to reopen this, but it was a wound that never healed inside my wife. So she really wanted to do IVF. So we did it. First one we did was with our egg, her egg and my sperm, and it took, but it was ectopic. So it was in a fallopian tube and she was about to die and like bleed into her abdomen. So we had to terminate, we had to excise the fallopian tube. And then she wanted to try again, and I'm like, nope, absolutely not. I hate this. Like, I'm not doing this again. I gave you one chance. I told you that was it. And then, she worked on me, and I'm a believer, so I got on my knees, and God told me, look, give this to your wife. It's really important to her. So we did, and we had our son Teddy about 2 years ago. Then we had one embryo left over that was frozen, and my wife said, we should try this again. I'm like, absolutely not. I've done this twice now. I told you I'd do it once. It's ridiculous. And then I just end up losing these battles all the time. So now my wife is due, and we're having a little girl, and that little girl's name is Tristan, and I have known that her name would be Tristan since I was 8 years old. In a series of books on small-town Scottish veterinarians, there was a veterinarian named Tristan, and I absolutely fell in love with that name when I was 8 years old, and it is going to be my daughter's name, and we're just not going to tell her that she's named after a male Scottish veterinarian until she's at least in college. We received our final order October 2020. Can I ask for my ex's tax returns now? It's probably going to depend on what it says in your decree. Some decrees allow for you to get taxes every year. Most of them do not, though, so you have to have some good reason for it. And usually, even if you have a good reason for it, they're just going to deny it. So you probably, to get it, you could ask for a modification. You could file for a modification. And in most states, I mean, here in Utah, you have to provide tax returns if there is a modification requested. So that's one way to think about it. Is it possible to undo being legally declared the parent of a minor child? Wow. Yeah. So this is going to depend. There are ways to do it, and then this is going to depend on your state. So here in Utah, let's say you were declared, and then because you say that you signed a voluntary declaration of paternity, okay, then the only way to really get around that is to go find the real dad, and then you file this paternity case and say that you're not the father, but this other guy is the father, and you have genetic testing results and things like that. So, but every state is going to be different. So, where in Alaska? I grew up in Anchorage. I never know how to say these handles. Anyway, I grew up in Cold Bay. So Cold Bay is on the Aleutian Peninsula near Dutch Harbor. It's a village of 85 people. My father ran a salmon hatchery, and my mother was an air traffic controller. We lived a very, very interesting life out there. I blame all of my social problems on the fact that I grew up in a small Alaskan village of 85 people. I did go to high school in Anchorage, though. I went to Service, so we lived near Hillside. So I can't provide, he's getting cash about ORS. I'm still sure he claims when he files. Oh, okay. Yeah. So he files taxes. You can use tax filings as evidence of income as well. So if somebody is not putting money in a bank or something like that, usually they're actually not accurate on their taxes, because the only reason you get paid in cash is so you don't have to tell Uncle Sam and the communists at the IRS about it. But anyway, if he's dumb enough to do that, then yeah, you can use his filed tax returns as evidence. Okay, Sanchez. Curious if child support takes care of that, or if I have to file something with the courts. I'm sorry, I missed something there. Let's do this. If you want to modify child support after an order, do you have to appear before the judge again? It's going to depend on your state, but maybe not. Most of the time, I mean, the vast majority of the time, actually, child support modifications are handled by the administrative agency that handles those things, and that's the Office of Recovery Services, or whatever your state calls their Office of Recovery Services. So they have an admin process that goes through that, and I would say probably 98 to 99% of child support modifications are taken care of that way instead of in front of a judge. Do you deal with other family law besides divorce? Yes, I do. Custody cases, paternity cases, all of those. I just call myself a divorce attorney because that's how people, when people think about family law, they just think divorce attorney, so that's what I say I am. If I agree to a lower support amount, will that affect a review increase later? It can, if it's a downward deviation or an upward deviation from, if we're talking about child support, if it's downward or upward deviation from the child support amounts as they are in your state, then that could have an effect on any modification in the future. And a lot of times what happens is, when you deviate and then you try to get back to the amount that it should be on a modification, many times the court will say, well, no, I'm not going to do that because you deviated. You knew you deviated from it, so I'm not going to give you the benefit of getting back to the statutory numbers. But, that's I almost never tell my clients to deviate from the statutory numbers just for that reason. Okay, let's see what else we got. Congrats. Oh, well, thank you, Alistair. I appreciate that. Curious if child support takes care. Sorry, read that one. Still not sure what that one means. I have stayed home with my baby since birth. Does it matter if I don't have a job for determination of custody? I mean, it's a factor, right? It's a factor that courts look at. It's usually not a factor that makes that much of a difference. What I can tell you is that if you're a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad and you're going to get divorced, I have this conversation with literally every stay-at-home parent I meet with. If you're going to get divorced, you're choosing a life path, or a life path has been chosen for you that's going to require you to work 40 hours a week. Because unless you're married to a neurosurgeon, they make like $1 million a year, or a high-priced lawyer, or, a pilot who makes a ton of money, or something, something like that, right? A business guy, a lady who makes a ton of money, then you are going to need to work. So it's just the reality of the situation. Okay, Super 74. Does an ex have the right to know what the other received in an inheritance? So you're divorced and you got an inheritance after the divorce? Absolutely not. Your ex does not have the right to know anything about your money, really, except as it affects child support, and inheritance almost never affects child support. I mean, maybe in some states, but I literally don't know any. Can I file with the ORS even though we have a set child support amount in our divorce decree? Yes. Usually what ORS does is they're a clearinghouse, so they're the ones that actually get the child support. If you want to use IRS to modify child support, then you're going to be restricted by their administrative procedures on dealing with child support and adjusting child support. So you can't just go to ORS and say, adjust this for me. Like, you can't use them as some proxy to do that. But, if you start a case with ORS and then ORS deems it's time to look at child support again and modify it, then that would happen. But you have no idea when that's actually going to happen at the ORS, because, like I said, they're little Nazis. Can we agree on an amount of alimony rather than calculating? Yeah, you can agree on whatever you want. Absolutely. What happens if my baby has the dad's name on the birth certificate, but he didn't sign it? Can you change it? I have absolutely no idea. I would think so, because he's not on the birth certificate. So I would think you could change your kid's name. Name changes are usually a judicial function, right? They're a legal function. So you'd probably have to go to court and change the name. But, depending on the state and depending on whether or not your baby's dad has actually put himself out there as your kid's dad, you may be able to do it without notifying him. I don't know. It's going to depend on your state. Sorry about that. See if we have anything else here. This is user 605, blah, 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 blah. Soon to be X's attorney is putting together our divorce paperwork. We'll have an attorney review. Is that okay? Yeah, that's totally fine. I think this is really important that if your spouse has an attorney, or your other has an attorney and writes up paperwork, gives it to you to look at, man, just go get an attorney to look at. Pay an attorney like $300 for an hour or something like that, and do it. There's absolutely no reason not to. But believe me, you're going to save more money by spending that money than you can possibly imagine, because you get something wrong on those papers and you're spending thousands and tens of thousands of dollars to fix that mistake. So just pay some money up front and get somebody to look at it. Okay, metamorphosis. After 17 years, he quit. $150,000 job, won't pay $4,000 monthly in child support. Will this affect alimony too? I don't know what you mean by effect, in the sense that, like, he's not paying alimony. Yeah, I would imagine. But will it actually decrease the amount of alimony that he pays, or child support that he pays? That's going to depend on whether he was fired for the job, why he was fired for the job, whether he's voluntarily underemployed, if he's going to get another job at that same wage. Depends on a ton of things. Just because he quit a job does not mean he gets out of paying alimony or child support. Okay, Strugglesaurus Rex. I love these handles. If I want to move, which order should I go to make less hassle if I'm going to start into the divorce process? You may think about moving before the divorce process. You need to talk to an attorney where you are to see if you can do that, but it's significantly harder to move during the divorce process or after the divorce process. So if you're thinking about it, you may want to do it before you file anything at all. Jessica, how hard is it to have parental rights stripped in Utah? So this is kind of a question for a juvenile court attorney, and I'm not a juvenile court attorney. So if the Division of Child and Family Services becomes involved because there's neglect or abuse or something like that, they can strip. And it's hard, but it can certainly be done. They do it all the time, actually. If that's not the case and you're just trying to strip somebody else's parental rights, like you as the parent are trying to strip somebody else's parental rights, it's very, very difficult to do that. There are statutes on this. There are factors that you have to look at and things that have to be done, but it's a process, and it's a difficult process. My ex has full custody, and I don't know where he lives. I want to modify the current decree and order. What can I do? Go get a private investigator and find out where the person lives, and then once you find that out, then you file a petition to modify and try to get custody of the kids. But you got to find the person first. And if you can't physically find them, you can go ask the court for alternative means of service. Service is giving the papers to the other person to give them notice of the modification. So you can do this over email. You can do this over Facebook. I've done it over Twitter. I've done it over Instagram. I've done it, lots and lots of different ways. But you have to specifically ask the court for that because you cannot find them physically. So start with the PI first. And when you go to the PI, tell the PI to conduct what's called a skip trace. Skip trace is just a way to find somebody, and it's usually pretty accurate. We use PIs to get skip traces all the time. Casey, spouse is active duty military station in Utah. Would I, being the father, have a hard time relocating outside of Utah? Yeah, it depends. So military, you won't have a hard time if your spouse is going to be relocated by the military in like a year or two. Like we all realize that's gonna happen. So in those sorts of situations, the non-military spouse is usually able to move away if they have primary physical custody of the kids. If the military person is going to be there for like 5 years or 10 years or whatever in Utah, then it's going to be much, much harder. Have special needs child support calculated the exact same way that normal child support is calculated here in Utah. Although in Utah, if it's a special needs child and they need child support past the age of 18, then there's a specific provision in our laws that allows child support to go past that time. But you have to prove that that's actually necessary for the kid. Let's see if we have anything else. And let's see what time it is. 1:12. Okay, I got to get up to Ogden. I have to meet with somebody in Ogden in a couple hours. For those who don't know, I'm in Salt Lake City. Ogden's about, it's Clearfield actually, so it's about 40 minutes from here. My ex has full custody. Answer that one. Okay. All right, Metamorphosis. He's voluntarily underemployed, refuses to get a new one, and has warrants for violating domestic violence. Okay, well, that's not good. He's probably kind of screwed. So if he's voluntarily underemployed, you don't get to not pay child support and alimony because you're an idiot or you just don't want to work, right? It's not how it functions. Here in Utah, you still have to pay child support and you still have to pay alimony if you commit a crime and go to prison, right? Because it's not your child's fault that you're a criminal, and it's not your ex's fault that you're a criminal. So we're pretty strict about stuff like that. Oh, she just disappeared. I want to adopt. She's abusive as well. So, yeah, I mean, maybe you can strip parental rights because of the abuse. I don't know. You just got to check in your state. But like I said, every time I've ever done this in Utah, it's a long process and a difficult process. How do I get my ex-wife's small business evaluated properly since she can easily fudge it? So The best way to do this, most of the time, we just take the tax returns and we look at the tax returns. We get evaluation. We approximate evaluation from the tax returns, usually based on gross receipts or net profit, but usually based on gross receipts because that's easier, just kind of the easier way to do it. If you really, really want to do it accurately, you have to go get somebody, a business evaluator to come in and evaluate the business. That usually take, minimum that's going to cost $2,500 to do that. Depending on the size of the business, it's going to go up from there. Okay. I'm not seeing too much else come in. Pirate Kent, can a Quadro be renegotiated? No. So here's the deal. When you get divorced, you split assets, you split retirement assets. And when you split retirement assets, you do it on almost always on a percentage basis. Like somebody gets 50 and somebody gets 50 or 60 or 40 or whatever it is. Okay. Then what happens from there is you get a Quadro, a qualified domestic relations order, and that Quadro tells the retirement company how to divide up the retirement accounts. Okay, so let's say somebody has, just using round numbers here, somebody has $1 million in a pension, right? And you get 50% of that pension. So you have a Quadro saying, I get 50% of this, which comes out to $500,000. You give it to the pension system and they give you, they cut you half the check or they just create a different account and you get like $500,000, right? Or you get half the check cut to you for, whatever half is. Okay. So you can't renegotiate the Quadro because the Quadro is just telling the retirement system what to do. What you have to do is go back and renegotiate the divorce decree. So can't renegotiate a Quadro. You have to go back and renegotiate the underlying divorce decree. What normally happens when he stops paying all the bills in divorce? Usually with the way we deal with this is that we go to temporary orders and we say, hey, look, he or she has stopped paying the bills and, we're going to lose the house or something. So we need to get this money, this spigot turned back on, right? We need to get the money in for the bills, take care of the kids, figure out temporary child support, temporary alimony, all these types of things. So that's how we deal with it. Okay, let's see if we have anything else. Oh, when's the baby due? Okay, so the baby was due yesterday. My wife has not had any contractions. She's doing pretty well. So we will see if it comes today or tomorrow. She's set to be induced on Wednesday, though. My ex has custody, and while in his care, the kids have become obese. Can I use that in a modification? That's a great question. I've never really dealt with that too much. So if they're malnourished, you absolutely can. And actually, obesity and malnourishment tend to kind of go hand in hand because you're just eating too many calories and not actually eating enough nutrients. So you may look at the underlying, like, are they malnourished? And you need to go get a doctor to look at that. But yeah, if your kids are like morbidly obese, then that's certainly a factor, right, that a judge is going to look at. It's probably not the only one that's going to get you different amounts of time, get you custody or anything like that, because lots of kids get obese. I was obese when I was younger. Thankfully, lost that weight. But yeah, it's certainly something that a judge is going to look at, especially if your kid was perfectly healthy, right, of a completely normal BMI before you got divorced, and then start living with them and it just like blew up like a balloon. Yeah, that's something a judge is going to look like. Emily, how do I deal with this all so easily? I struggle to keep my emotions in check. We all struggle to keep our emotions in check. I deal with my job, one, because thankfully I just have a personality that allows me to do this. I've just been kind of, given that personality as part of my constitution. And then the other way I deal with it is I go to Europe a lot. So I vacation. So I lived in Italy when I was younger, and I go back to Italy quite a lot. I love their food. I love them. I have friends over there. All the art. It's my favorite place on the earth. It's like home. And I go back 2 to 3 times a year to deal with my stress. And I've not been able to go back since COVID hit. I was actually there when COVID hit, and then we got the last plane out, and I haven't been able to go back since. And it's been tough. Like my emotions, it's been very difficult to deal with my emotions the last year. I don't know how to say this. Hope or win. Thank you for all of you're welcome. I hope they help people. I really do. Like I ain't making money off this, guys. Like I'm really not. So I'm just here to answer people's questions. Which is funny when I just think it's great when I answer questions and the people attack me for answering the questions. I'm like, dude, I'm just answering questions, man. I don't have any other agenda here. My ex has custody while the kids are. Oh, yep. All right. I already answered that one. Can I calculate her not working as underemployment? Yes. So either there's going to be an imputation of income, and an imputation is just kind of pretending that somebody makes a certain amount of money, right? So we're either going to pretend or impute somebody at minimum wage, or you're going to impute somebody at a higher wage depending on their job skills. And to do that, we usually go get, if we want it over the minimum wage, we have to go get what's called a vocational assessment. And an assessor sits down, looks at employment history, resume, all these things, and determines what the person could make in which type of job fields. Tips for divorcing a narcissist who is highly intelligent. Look, I've dealt with essentially every mental illness that human beings experience. I've helped over 3,000 people at this point, met with over 10,000. So what I can tell you is that sometimes we need to do things differently because of a person's mental illness, but the vast, vast majority of the time we do the exact same sorts of things and get relatively similar results no matter what the person's mental illness is. But if you have a really, really difficult narcissist that you have to deal with, and I got to tell you, do not use the word narcissist when you sit down and you talk with attorneys because they're going to shut off. Do not use the word narcissist when you talk with judges. They are going to turn off. So really, to deal with this, you just got to find an attorney who's dealt with narcissists before, right? And again, you don't go in and you say, I'm married to a narcissist. What you do is you go in and talk about your story and talk about how the person behaves. And at that point, the attorney is going to kind of show their true colors and like, oh yeah, I've dealt with this type of person before. Here's what we've done. So that's the way you want to do it. You want to talk about behavior and not about labels. TikTok has helped you more than therapy. I was going to be a clinical my grandmother was a clinical psychologist and a professor, and I love her, smartest woman I have ever met in my entire life. That said, I don't have a ton of respect for most psychologists. I think most of them are not very good at what they do. But I also don't have a ton of respect for lawyers. I think most of them are not very good at what they do either. So you just got to find an extraordinarily good one. Does going to counseling to be better co-parents look better? Yeah. I mean, it can, right? If there are lots and lots of allegations that you suck as a parent, that you don't co-parent, and you're actually going in and trying to get better as a co-parent, yeah, that's probably going to help you. 1997. I was in Italy in 1997. I was 19 years old. Not smart enough to have graduated from law school at that point. Can you get alimony if married for 23 years? Yeah, it depends on the numbers, but so my general rule of thumb is here in Utah, so every place is different, but my general rule of thumb is 0 to 4 years. You're probably not getting alimony. 5 or 6 years, probably, but not for a very long time, probably around 2 years. And then anything over 6, yes, you're absolutely getting alimony. Again, if the numbers work, right? If everyone's super, super poor, you're not doing it. But if you make kind of normal middle class money, yeah, there's going to be some alimony out there. You're welcome, Bethany. Well, hello from California. Hopefully you guys out there can go eat nowadays and actually get out of your houses without getting picked up by the police. I'm not the biggest fan of California, to be honest. I do want to go out to LA and eat. There are some places in LA I really want to eat at. And I've wanted to, but you guys have been shut down so much that I just haven't bothered in the last 6 or 9 months. Let me see what else we got. Not sure if you'll know, but ex's spouse can't have contact with child. Spouse is there. So if there's an order saying the ex can't have contact with the kid, but the spouse is there, that's actually pretty serious, and judges do not like that sort of situation at all. So I would take it in front of a judge. Get as much evidence as you can that it's happening, but a lot of times the way we'll deal with a situation like that here in Utah is to actually get what's called a guardian ad litem that goes in and talks with the kid and says, is this person who's not supposed to be around you? And then that guardian ad litem will talk to the court about it. So that's one way to think about it. Amanda, I bet she's ready. Yeah, she's freaking ready. Let me tell you, she is. Yeah, I admire women for a number of reasons, and the ability to grow a human inside of them and give birth to that human is one of those reasons. I would never. I'm just so glad I'm a guy that I don't have to go through that. Queen something or other, seriously, is not getting wife a birthday, anniversary, and Mother's Day grounds for divorce. Anything is grounds for divorce. Anything you want is grounds for divorce. What I can tell you is that not getting your wife a birthday or an anniversary present is grounds for being a piece of crap husband. So if I find my ex, do I modify the court order where he's at or the case where the case started? Oh, so very likely where the case started. So this is the way this goes. If you start a case, let's say you're in Oklahoma, right? And you start the case in Oklahoma and then somebody moves out of Oklahoma, the case is still going to be there in Oklahoma. Even if both people move out of the state of Oklahoma, unless you domesticate it in another state, it's going to stay in Oklahoma. So you're very, very likely going to need to go back to the state where you filed in order to do a modification. Can you bring narcissism up if... Let's find this. It's a good question. Crud, I lost it. Can you bring narcissism up? They have I don't know if they have an actual diagnosis. Yeah, you can. Yeah, at that point, you can actually use the term narcissist, and the judge is not going to turn off. That doesn't happen very often because, anyway, this is controversial, but the data I've seen, there aren't that many actual people with narcissistic personality disorder. It's relatively rare in the general population. By relatively rare, there's still lots of people with it, so don't get mad at me, but it's relatively rare. What I can tell you is that people in divorce say it all the time when it doesn't exist. Like they're married to jerks, they're married to a-holes, and they just say narcissist, and it really turns people off. And for better or worse, that's just the way it is. But if there's an actual diagnosis of NPD, then you can certainly bring that up and use that term. Oh, thank you. My videos are low key and make me want to go to law school. Well, that's good. Be a lawyer. I think being a lawyer is great. You need to know whether or not you want to be a lawyer. You should not become a lawyer because of what you see on TV. Actually go kind of mirror lawyers and sit around them and see if you want to do what they do. But what I can tell you is that being a lawyer is absolutely fantastic. God made me to be a lawyer. It's the way my brain works. It's what I enjoy. I think like a lawyer and always have ever since I was a little tiny kid. So I think it's absolutely wonderful. I would never do anything else. Would you suggest not sharing victim's story regarding what happened until after the case is over? I'm not sure exactly where we're talking about here. This is sexy LTN. But no, I mean, talk about your story, right? You're meeting with an attorney. You're meeting with a judge. You're going to trial, whatever. You got to tell your story. Divorce cases are about stories. So you have to go through that. Yeah. How can I prove the ex's spouse is present when it's court ordered not to? The GAO wants proof. I have no idea how you do that other than just taking like pictures. So you could get a PI to do it. I've done that before in certain cases. Usually the guardian ad litem will actually talk with the kids and ask the kids if the person's there. Like, I don't know why the guardian ad litem's not doing that. That's kind of the guardian ad litem's job, unless your state has a different system than we do. Is a 13-year-old allowed to choose who to live with if divorced? Nah, not really. I mean, again, it's going to depend on your state. I think maybe in Georgia, 13, 14-year-olds can kind of do that sort of stuff. I don't really know. I'd heard that, but I don't know that that's true. Here in Utah, the age is 18. You get a little bit more of a say when you're about 14. You really do get a say when you're 16, though, because you're a 16-year-old and you're a butthole. You don't really want to be around your parents. You just kind of do whatever you want anyway. But the legal age is 18. Then you get to choose. Everyone needs a therapy session or two, in my opinion. I've had exactly 2 therapy sessions in my life. I had a problem and I wanted to go in and have somebody to talk to about it. And by the end of the second therapy session, I decided I was going to stop going because I had kind of inceptioned the therapist to think the way I wanted him to think about the problem. And I realized at the end when he said, well, I think this is your problem, it was literally exactly what was in my head. I'm like, I'm not getting anything out of this. So I've never had therapy after that. But, if you need it, great. Good for you, man. I almost passed out watching my daughter have my granddaughter being born. It was amazing. Yeah, I can imagine. So funny. I'll tell you, I don't know if it's funny or not, but I think it's funny. So it's a story. It's 1:30. I got to go in a little bit. So when my wife gave birth to my son, Teddy, I was obviously in the room and they had me hold her leg. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. But before that, a little bit before that, they had asked me a number of times, do you want to cut the umbilical cord? I'm like, I do not want to cut the umbilical cord. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor for a reason. I don't want to have any part of this. But they kept asking me that. So I got asked like probably 6 times. And then, sorry, there's something in the background here. And then I'm holding my wife's leg and she's giving birth. And he's about to come out. I think he get crowned. He's about to come out. The doctor, the OBGYN actually, birthing my wife here says, so do you want to cut the cord when your son comes out? And I looked at him and I'm like super stressed and I'd been up all night and it was just a bad deal. So I looked at him and I said, do you want to do your own divorce? Because he knew I was a divorce attorney and he looked at me and everybody in the room kind of looked at me and he said, no. And I said, yeah. And I don't want to do your job either. So just give birth to my son and cut his cord. I felt like a jerk saying that. And I was a jerk saying that, but in my defense, I was really tired and really stressed out. My 13-year-old can't. How does an administrative support order work? It's the Office of Recovery Services in your state. You just got to go ask them how they work. I don't have any idea. Every state's different. Going to counseling, husband doesn't want to because he's an alcoholic. Sorry, alcoholics are really, really difficult to deal with. Sorry. What to do in situation of verbal abuse and what to have the address regarding visitation with the kids. Verbal abuse is really, really tough. Sometimes when you address it with children by actually interviewing the children and getting their take on it, like, have they been affected by the verbal abuse? How have they been affected? That can get in front of the judge. But verbal abuse is tough because, look, everybody getting divorced verbally abuses their spouse. That's just kind of how it works, unfortunately. Let me see what else we got. Oh, can't get the 13-year-old. My friend can't get the 13-year-old to visit. Not much he can do, but take her back to court. Yeah. Sometimes that's necessary. I don't know. Those are very, very difficult situations when you get a 13, 14-year-old just literally absolutely will not go with the other parent. That's really super difficult to deal with. But most of the time, Most of the time, in my experience, it's the other parent just not really facilitating it, saying, all right, fine, if you don't want to go, blah, blah. So don't do that. Don't be a jerk. Like if your kid needs to go over to the other parent's house and there's not some extraordinarily good reason, like physical danger sort of thing or drugs or something like that, make your kids go. Let me see what else we got. I had 3 C-sections, so it was a lot to watch. Oh, that's awful. I can't even imagine. Again, just glad I'm a dude. Love ladies. Love what you guys, what you do. You're amazing. So glad I'm not a woman. Some lawyers said that modifying court. I obviously missed something there. Yeah, you can share a tip. Hopefully it's appropriate, but yeah, you can share a tip about what you realize after divorce if you want to. If it's don't get married, then just save it. It's not really good advice. Retaco 25, thanks for the present. I don't know what those are. I don't do these live streams that often, but I appreciate it. All right, let's see if we have anything else here. Might have to wrap up here in a minute. So somebody, is it Gailey? 100 videos. Here's something I can tell you about videos. Court's not going to watch videos. They may be okay for your attorney to look at, but you don't want your attorney watching 100 videos. The $300 an hour, you're going to pay that attorney a tremendous amount of money to just sit and watch videos. So pick out the kind of 2 or 3 worst videos or most representative videos, however you want to say it, and then have your attorney look at those, or possibly have the court look at those. But more is not really better when it comes to videos. So I think that's about it. I think I've got through them all. Oh. Helen Keller was probably immune to flashbangs. That is probably true. That is probably true. So staff invite the parent to participate in some activities with you to build up the relationship. Yeah. I mean, if there wasn't, abuse, that sort of thing, that's totally fine. I think I wish more exes did that sort of thing with each other. How do you divide, this is Sadie, how do you divide debt in a divorce case? Here in Utah, it's almost always 50-50 unless there's some extraordinary reason that it shouldn't be 50-50. Houston in the house. Oh, good for you, man. There are a couple barbecue places down in Houston that I really want to try, but I've never actually been down there. Our brother-in-law lives there. My wife lived in San Angelo. That's where she grew up. So love me some Texas, but never been down to Houston. If we can't agree on the MSA, does it go to mediation? I don't know what MSA is. Just assume that I never know what acronyms mean. But yeah, if you can't agree, like here's the general rule: if you can't agree on things at the very beginning of the case, your divorce case, you are going to go to mediation. At least here in Utah, we get 99% of our cases done through the mediation process. Oh, presents are money. Takes like 65%. I get money for this? That's ridiculous. I obviously do not know how to monetize this stuff at all. I should probably figure that out one of these days, but I would imagine that trying to monetize this would be more trouble than it's actually worth. Do I see a lot of abuse in cases? Physical, mental, verbal? Yeah, way too much. I mean, more than 0 is too much, right? But yeah, I have my fair share. I've done hundreds and hundreds of physical abuse cases, sexual abuse cases, mental, verbal, all of it. Yep. You mentioned I have to modify the case where it began once, but other lawyers said it was the opposite. Well, the other lawyer might know more than I do, having read literally two sentences about your case on TikTok. So that's why I always reserve the right to be completely and totally incorrect on here. Emily, I should do more lives. I should actually. I should do more of these. I enjoy them a lot. Let me see what we got. Scared to go through divorce because don't want to fight over or split up the kids. Well, yeah, that's legitimate. That's exactly what you're going to do. There's no way to get around it. You just have to ask yourself, is it worth it, right? Is your situation such that you need to get divorced? And if it is, then okay. If it's not, and you want to try to make it work, make it work. Do you think a judge will be upset if my TikTok speaks about my parental alienation situation? I tell people not to talk about their divorces and their relationships on TikTok because it could get used against them. I use social media against people all the time. So yeah, I don't think it's a good idea. I would, I wouldn't take evidence down. Let's put it that way. I can't tell you to take evidence down. That's not okay. But yeah, I would knock it off. My ex has $30,000 in credit debt. He used it for his mistress. No, you do not have to. I don't know of any state that makes you pay the debt incurred for the whore. So no. Oh, marital settlement agreement. Okay, so if you can't agree on a marital settlement agreement, are you going to go to mediation? Yeah, I think you probably will. Yeah, I don't know exactly when that happens in cases in your state, but yeah, you're going to go to mediation. My grandpa, this is Janie, and my grandpa is hiring me to hire an attorney, begging me to hire an attorney. But I feel like if we agree on everything, is that crazy? That depends on your situation. If you got a controlling spouse, do not engage in those types of negotiations, right? Because he's just going to take advantage of you. If you hold the upper hand, then use the upper hand. Just it really does depend on your situation. Ohio, hey, hope things are going okay in Ohio. Good luck with the baby. I really appreciate it. It's yeah, so I'm 44. My wife is 43, and I'm worried, man. I mean, she's fine. She's always done really well. With the other pregnancy, she did exceptionally well, and her body's kind of made for having babies. It seems like, other than the fact that we can't actually get pregnant in a normal way. But yeah, I'm a little nervous about it. Would I have to split my business if me and my old lady ever get a divorce? That's really going to depend on your state and the type of business that you have. So here in Utah, if you have a service-based business, so you're a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, the guy who goes out and cleans air ducts or, something, or a esthetician or, something like that, then service-based businesses are almost never divided because, how do you divide a service-based business where you are the service? If you make widgets, though, and you make 1 billion widgets and, make $10 billion, yeah, then some of that's going to get divided, man. So, and to the extent to which it gets divided is really dependent on your state and a whole bunch of things. Do you ever represent First Amendment and Fourth Amendment violations, or just divorce court? I just do divorce. That is it. I'm a specialist in the sense that I only do one thing. I do really like First Amendment cases. I'm a religious freedom guy, and I would really like to get into that space and help people in that way, and free exercise and things like that. But I've never made that switch. Afraid X will go for shared custody. Does time spent with the grandparents count as his time? Kind of depends, usually. But if he drops the kids off to the grandparents and doesn't actually parent them, that usually is held against him in the custody analysis. Let me see what else we got. level up. Very valuable. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope I'm giving some value to people out there. I have a bachelor's in business admin, 3 GPA, but I'm scared of law school. Good. Be scared of law school. It's hard, but it's meant to be hard. It is. Like, I really dug law school. It was like an intellectual feast for me. First year is horrid. It's like learning Chinese when all you know how to speak is Italian. It's really rough. And I would study. How often did I study? At least 12 hours a day. Yeah, at least 12 hours a day the first year. But it's meant to be very difficult. It's meant to weed people out. Although it's meant to weed people out much less now than it used to be. They don't like people failing law school now. I wish they actually would make more people fail it. We'd get a better class of attorney if they did, but we're dealing with a different sort of generation and a different sort of administrator that doesn't like to upset their students. Llama. Hey, Utah. I don't know if you're saying hey, Utah to me or you are in Utah, but either way, go Utah. No, that's not my wife. So we're actually, that's our contractor. We're redoing the bathroom downstairs before, hopefully, well, it'll be finished. It's almost finished, but it'll be completely finished after the baby comes. So he's just in here drilling away. You want to know how to get divorced? Like, remodel your house. That's how you get divorced, man. I'm so glad seeing you like, oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, these are fun. How long did I go to law school? I assume that's the question. So the law school is 3 years. So the first year, they scare you to death. The second year, they work you to death. And the third year, they bore you to death. The third year of law school is literally the most boring year of school you will ever have. And that's tough because schools are really boring sometimes. But third year of law school is completely worthless. Does owning a business LLC count as a 40-hour week job in the eyes of custody? Well, I mean, it can. I own an LLC, and there are a lot of weeks where I work more than 40 hours a week. So it doesn't just count for 40 hours a week. If you work 80 hours a week at your business, then they have to look at how many hours you actually work. All right, I got to go here in a minute. Got to go put on my suit and then get in the car. Thank you for answering. Yeah, you're welcome. Absolutely. So what degree did I get before I went to law school? I was a psych major, so I was going to be a clinical psychologist like my grandmother and a therapist. And then I decided that I didn't want to go through 6 years of a PhD to make, on average, $65,000 a year, which was what they made when I was thinking about doing it. That's ridiculously low, and I like money way more than that. And to be honest, like when I really thought through things, like being a lawyer just fit my brain better anyway. So. Oh, Emily, no, my wife is not doing anything. She's bored because she can't really move around. But she's just like bored waiting for the baby to come out. That's pretty much how that's going for her right now. What does it usually look like when you have shared parenting and one parent moves states away? So let's say you have 50-50 parenting and then one parent decides to move somewhere. Almost always, again, this might be different in other states, but almost always in Utah, the kids stay with the parent who stays, right? So if you want to move away, you can, but you're going to lose that 50-50 with your kids. Very, very likely. Yes, remodeling is the worst. Oh, my heavens, man. You can't work during law school, correct? So I had a buddy, actually, who did work during law school, but he was insane. So many law schools tell you absolutely cannot work the first year of law school. And I know a lot of people who do anyway because they need the money. So they just do it kind of sub rosa. But no, you should not work the first year of law school. I don't think that's a good idea. The second year of law school, probably. The third year of law school, absolutely. Because like I said before, it is the frickin' worst. It's the most boring year of school you'll ever have. All right, I got one more minute, then I'm going to go. Order to disclose wasn't met, but will be by the time we attend to court, or there's still repercussions. Oh, so if they cured the problem before you go to court, a lot of times courts will say, no, I'm not going to do anything because they cured the problem before we got here. And it depends on your judge, but here in Utah, that's usually how they do it. No, Mike. Well, yeah, I appreciate it, Mike. Please do more lives. I will definitely. All right, I'm good. Yeah, I will definitely be doing more lives. I like these. Although I feel like the really odd dude on TikTok who doesn't like bounce around or talk about makeup or something, or do crazy crap. But that's just not me, so I ain't gonna do it. Okay, so if we have anything else. Entertain. Well, I hope this was entertaining. Thank you, Emily. I really appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna jet, guys. Got to go up north, meet with the client, potential client, and hopefully my wife gives birth sometime soon. That's why we were. Oh, well, good. I'm glad there are people on TikTok who actually want to be educated, who want to talk through these things. I really do appreciate everybody being here for that. It's a great community. I've always loved TikTok. As weird as it is, like, this is the social media that I do best and enjoy the most. So thanks, everybody. Okay. Now I have to figure out how to get out of here. Thank you very much.